What's the best way to learn a language? The best, fastest, and most efficient way to learn a language. I'm going to explain how to learn a language from scratch, step by step. Pay attention to every one of these steps. Please watch the whole thing before you start looking for problems for every solution I offer you. A language is a system. A language is composed by a lot of different parts. It's divided in a bunch of different skills that are related to each other, and working on one will help you get better at the others as well, but you need to work specifically on each one of the skills. Let's look at the whole thing. A language is basically knowing basically three things. You need to know words, you need to know the meaning of those words, yeah? You need to know what those words sound like, and you need to know how those words get together and form sentences. And that's it. That's all you need. You need to be able to understand those three things when you hear them mostly. And you need to make those three things work for yourself when you're trying to speak. Yeah. So you need to know the words, you need to know the right pronunciation and how to put them together in a way that makes sense, which we call grammar. In this order, grammar is the least important of all three for a very specific reason. Unfortunately, grammar is what they mostly focus on in language schools. That's why people get really bad results in language schools and with teachers. So, why is grammar the least important? Well, let's look at vocabulary first. If you don't know the words, you can't understand and you can't speak. It's as simple as that. I mean, there's no way of arguing with that. If you don't know the words, you can't say what you want to say, and you can't understand, even if you know the grammar really well. Let's say you studied all the rules, but you don't know the vocabulary. It doesn't matter. You won't understand. If you don't know any grammar, but you know the vocabulary, let's say you take a 5-minute video and you know every single word that they're going to use, but you don't know any of the grammar. You will understand what they're talking about pretty well. There'll be some things that you won't be sure of if they met. Like, I've been there or I'm going to go there. Yeah, okay, but in context, if you know all the vocab, you don't need grammar to understand or communicate. Of course, you will not sound like your speaking will be bad. Yeah, you'll speak like Tarzan, but they will understand you. And once you get there, it's very easy to learn grammar. So first, you need to know the meaning of the words. The next thing is pronunciation. You need to know what those words sound like when native speakers use them, so that you not only understand the words on paper, but also when you hear them, like fast speech by native speakers, connected speech in a sentence, because words tend to uh, cluster together and it's much harder to understand them in the middle of a sentence. You need to develop the ability to understand that as well. So that's pronunciation, both for comprehension and for your own speaking. You need to work with the pronunciation after vocabulary. Again, if your grammar is non-existent, but you know the words and you know what they sound like and how you should pronounce them as well, you'll be able to understand and communicate. So grammar is the last part and also the easiest to learn. Vocab is the hardest, by the way, or the most work, because if you know the words and if you know what the language sounds like, just being exposed to the language, you'll end up learning the grammar, right? But I'll teach you a much more efficient way to learn grammar as well. But um, let's let's focus on vocabulary first. Yeah, so vocabulary first, then pronunciation, then grammar. Finally, in this order. So how do we learn words? We need to learn words fast, and a lot of them. In order to be fluent, I mean, there are different estimations, but you need around 10,000 words. You need to know around 10,000 words to be able to understand a language well. Of course, there's your active vocabulary and your passive vocabulary, right? Your passive vocabulary will always be much bigger. Those are words you can understand, but then you can think of them fast enough. You have a passive vocabulary in your native language as well. In fact, even in a native language, most of the words we can recognize, we don't really use them unless you are super articulate. And even then, you don't use. Most people use a limited amount of words. I think everyone uses a limited amount of words. Some people more than others, but anyway. So what we need is to increase both as fast as possible. Yeah. So we'll do basically three things for this. We'll combine mnemonic associations, which is a game changer. Yeah, it will boost your comprehension and your speaking like insanely if you use mnemonic associations. You can learn hundreds of words a day with this. I'll show you later on how to do it. Use mnemonic associations to memorize lots and lots of vocab fast, starting with the most common ones, because those will make everything more understandable, easier, more comprehensible. Then we do a lot of listening so that we review all these words that we memorize in context. It doesn't mean that we go through a memorizing phase and then a listening phase. No, you should do both at the same time from day one. Yeah, just listen to native speaker podcasts and memorize ideally over 100 words a day. And in a couple of weeks, you notice that you understand quite a lot of those podcasts because you've been memorizing thousands of words. In a couple of weeks, you can easily memorize 2,000. So that's already enough to know 90, 80, probably 90% of the words you'll hear. Yeah. So memorization with associations and then listening. And the third thing is retrieval practice, which is extremely effective. Retrieval practice means getting the words using flashcards or in a spreadsheet, and you have to look at you get the words in your native language or in English, and you have to translate into the target language. So you have to actively recall the words. You have to remember them. Yeah. So and this is one of the most effective ways to memorize anything, including vocabulary in a foreign language. Do this after memorizing the words with associations, so that you review them. Those are words you've created associations for. So now you get you let's say dog hund or dog perro in Spanish, and you create a mental image for that, and then later on you get dog, and okay, how do I say it? You try to say it, you get it wrong, you get the same flashcard again and again and again until you get it right, and you'll probably get it right quickly because you memorized it with associations if you did it right. These three things, yeah, memorization with associations, lots of listening, and retrieval practice. Keep doing it. Yeah, hundreds of words a day, ideally, and very soon you'll understand a lot. That's how you learn vocab quickly. If you're learning 3 words a day, 5 words a day, things like that, it's going to take years, and you don't want to do that. Okay, next, listening comprehension. And you're probably thinking, if you are relatively intelligent, you're probably thinking that we're already doing listening comprehension practice because I told you to listen to native speaker podcasts. And that's true. So listening to native speaker podcasts will help you review the vocab you've been memorizing, but also it'll help you improve your listening comprehension because you learn the right pronunciation by hearing all those words in context with the right pronunciation. So it's going to be very difficult at first, but if you keep doing it, eventually it'll become easy. Lots of listening like that. There are other exercises you can do for listening comprehension, but that's the most important one. Listening and repeating sentences will improve your own pronunciation. Just listening in general will improve your pronunciation, but if you want to do deliberate practice and you should do deliberate practice for your own pronunciation, listen and repeating sentences. Pay attention to small details. Try to sound as close as possible to the native speaker audio. Choose someone you want to sound like. By the way, this will help not only with your own pronunciation, it will help with your comprehension as well, because you are paying attention to small details. You notice small things, and then when you're doing more extensive listening, you will that will help you understand a lot more, because you'll understand small nuances about the pronunciation of the language, which will help you understand the words that you've memorized much better in context. Okay, so that's for listening comprehension. And finally, grammar. And for grammar, it's very, very simple. First, again, lots of listening, and you will start, if you know the vocab and you're doing lots of listening, you will, by simply in context, you'll start learning the grammar. But you can accelerate this process immensely if you do retrieval practice. Simply need long list of sentences in both languages, your native language and the target language, and you use either a spreadsheet or a flashcard and you translate into the target language and then get immediate feedback and you self correct over and over and over again until you get all of them correct. This is the best and most efficient way to learn grammar and to eliminate mistakes in general. And this is how you end up with good vocabulary, a lot of vocabulary, using good grammar and good pronunciation. When it comes to speaking, doing all these things will already really help your speaking because, well, you know the vocab, you know the pronunciation, you've been doing listening and repeating drills for pronunciation. And if you do the retrieval practice aloud, you're translating sentences from your native language into the target language. So first you're forcing yourself to think in the target language, yeah, to come up with sentences. And these are sentences that you wouldn't normally say because if you just go out and talk to people, you will end up talking about the same things over and over, and you will use a the very limited active vocabulary you have. But if you do retrieval practice with thousands of sentences, you'll increase your active vocabulary massively, and also the grammar you use. A lot of people understand more advanced grammar when they see it in context, when they read it, when they hear it, but they can't really use it themselves. Or they make lots of mistakes when they try to use it. A lot of people, Spanish speakers, for example, they just speak in the present when they're talking about trying to like tell a story or something like that. Like yesterday, I go to this place and blah blah blah. You can fix that quickly if you do retrieval practice. Yeah, you get thousands of example sentences and you translate from your native language into the target language aloud. Yeah, so you're thinking in the language and you're trying to say it, so you develop a muscle memory as well. You're training your ability to speak, and then you get immediate feedback. And if you made a mistake, you repeat the sentence aloud correctly this time, and then you review it tomorrow or in a couple of days or in 10 minutes if it was a very difficult one. And you keep doing this over and over again. And by doing this, you're working on your fluency because you're forcing yourself to think in the language. You're increasing your active vocabulary because you are uh, forcing yourself to think about words that you wouldn't normally use, and then you're saying them aloud, and you practice and you're training yourself to speak aloud, and you are you get an immediate feedback, so you're constantly getting corrected. So you do this plus listening and repeating, and lots of extra listening for pronunciation, and you're good. If you do all these things, you can very quickly, if you're consistent, and especially if you memorize a lot of vocab, especially the first few weeks, that's really important. Because otherwise everything else will be much slower. But if you memorize lots and lots and lots of vocab in the beginning, so your comprehension, so understanding everything else becomes much easier, and you can do all the other exercises, you will improve very quickly if you do all these things. Finally, if you are at an advanced level or you want to get good at specific conversations, you can first use language islands for all the conversations, interactions, situations you want to speak the language in. Yeah, if you want to work in sales, or you want to go to business meetings, or you want to talk to people in bars when you travel, whatever, you prepare specifically prepare scripts for that, and you again do retrieval practice, but with those sentences that you prepared. That's a game changer. Especially, I mean, it's a game changer at any level, really, because as a beginner, you can learn hundreds of sentences quickly that are useful and that you can use immediately in all the common situations that you face. But also, as a more advanced learner, you can learn really advanced and complex sentences for specific scenarios that you will use, and you will sound way more eloquent and you'll sound really proficient in the language if you do this. Um, and the other thing would be the Q&A exercise, which is basically a list of sentences and you try to answer them, or just a topic. I've got those question lists or topics, and you try to answer them without any preparation. And this is also an effective way to improve your fluency. But this is an extra advanced exercise you can do once you want to, if you want to challenge yourself and force yourself to talk about different topics and things like that. It's not really necessary unless you want to reach a really, really high level fast. Um, Doing memorization of vocabulary, lots of listening, retrieval practice allowed and with immediate feedback, and then using language islands will be enough to get really good at any language fast. Right?